Okay, so many interesting conversations today on World Women Davos Agenda 2024. And now I will have a great honor and pleasure to talk to former Polish President, Mr. Aleksander Kwaśniewski. Please join me on stage. And please, it's so good to get here men, leaders who are supporters of women cause. Mr. President, it is an honor to have you here with us. And when you look at this newest report by Davos World Economic Forum Global Risk Report, one of 10 major risks mentioned in the report is geopolitical instability, especially war in Ukraine. And I have a feeling that almost all the conversations during these days were about war, about the results of the war, and you are an expert, you are a great expert on what's going on in Ukraine. Could you tell us, from your perspective, what's the outlook? What are the probabilities of ending this war?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me here and to see so energetic women in one place, so many. That's fantastic, but I'm a little bit nervous because that is a very challenging situation for me. I think this Davos, of course, I didn't participate in all meetings, but I think if you want to define or describe Davos 24, so we have three main topics which we discuss mainly. First, artificial intelligence, second, American election, third, geopolitics and especially the war. You asked me about the war, and today we had very interesting, with a lot of very good speakers, Ukrainian breakfast, and we discussed this issue. And my opinion, of course, to say how this war can be finished, that's his question not to me, but to the prophets. You know, I would like to be a prophet, but I am not. But if you want to analyze the situation calmly and realistically, it's necessary to say that first, this war happened because we have aggressor. This aggressor is Vladimir Putin and Russian Federation. And the idea of Putin is to rebuild what he called Great Russia. It means to rebuild this Russia in sense of the Russian Empire before the revolution, Soviet Union after the October Revolution. But that is the idea number one. The idea number two is to have and to keep Ukraine in the zone of Russian influence. And not part of Ukraine, but entire Ukraine. And number 3 point of Putin's thinking and Putin policy is to destroy this geopolitical order what we have in the world after World War II, so after 1945. And of course he tries to realize this things. He thought that the war against Ukraine will be much easier, that 1 week should be enough to be in Kiev and to establish some pro-Moscow government in Kiev. It didn't happen. But while I'm speaking about this Putin's policy and to understand Putin, his approach to the problem is the same from the very beginning of the war and even earlier. Because speaking about Ukrainian-Russian war or Russian aggression against Ukraine is necessary to remember. That is not a question of time between 24th of February 22 until now. That is the story which started with annexation of Crimea and support for Lugansk and Donetsk separatists 2014. So we have a war which lasts 10 years. And because Putin doesn't want to change this politics and he wants to continue, I think the chances to see the end of this war is very difficult, because this Russian factor, the most important factor, the thinking of the aggressor, is the same last 10 years. Point number 2 is Ukraine. I think we didn't expect, I don't know, maybe some of you expected, but mainly the observers, the analysts, politicians, we didn't expect that this resistance of Ukraine will be so good, so effective, so determined, that Ukrainians are ready to pay the highest price, price of blood, price of life, price of injuries, etc., to stay as an independent, sovereign state. And of course, that is the next element which shows us that the end of this war is very difficult, because if some who, theoretically, would propose now for Ukraine some kind of compromise, what kind of compromise? Let's resign of these territories which are now occupied by Russians. Politically, for Ukrainian politicians or leaders, it would be suicide. It would be suicide. That is impossible, because the determination of the people in Ukraine is so strong. But, realistically speaking again, it's a problem with human resources. Russia has 140 million people, Ukraine less than 40, because many of Ukrainians decided to leave the country. Partly they are refugees, partly they are business people making own businesses in many places of the world. But as a next element, I'm speaking very, very shortly because we have not enough time to discuss in details all this issue. But the second point, Ukraine is also not prepared for some sudden end of this war. Of course, if they would lose this war, this is a different story. And now the factor number 3 is United States and Europe. This year, and therefore my prediction for 24 is that at least it will be extremely complicated year in this Ukrainian-Russian situation, because we have election in the United States. And this election looks as quite complicated, because Mr. Trump can be again the president of the United States. And Mr. Trump, very diplomatically speaking, is a very unpredictable politician. And so we don't know what means his victory, because we know what means Biden policy. Biden was very fair to Ukraine from the very beginning. America spent a lot of money, sent real military support for Ukraine, and but he has now the problems with Congress to accept next tranches of this support. So, American situation, this political situation in the United States can influence this conflict very much, because, simply speaking, if America will decide with Reagan or with Biden or by Congress to support Ukraine, Ukraine will fight. If America will decide to cut or to stop military aid for Ukraine, Ukraine has no chances. And of course, this idea, what Trump said several times, that now NATO should be much more European and not so much Euro-Atlantic. So it means that European countries should pay more for NATO and for the war. Okay, that's something what I can accept, but it cannot happen in short time. We need more time for that. And frankly speaking, Ukraine needs such support when also the increase of military assistance or financial assistance from European side, and to keep at least the level of today's assistance from the United States, that is, let's say, minimum of support which Ukraine needs, and what can give Ukrainians chance to win this election. So, 24, I don't see the chances for some real end of the war.
Mr. President, we didn't agree on this question, but I'm very curious, and I was meeting with how should we think about the war in future? We, West, democratic West, a global West. Because yesterday I met 2 businesswomen, I think one from Germany, one from France, and we were talking about the war. And they said Trump will be better for the Ukrainian war because he will end the war. He knows Putin, by the way, you met him several times and you know Putin too. And he will make a ceasefire. He will end the war. And I said, why are you thinking that? What is the reason? I mean, we are fed up with the war. I mean, we, the West. And why, I ask. And we are paying the price for the war. Price in electricity, in the higher cost of energy. And this is something that strikes me as a thinking of elites, but also many people in the West. What would you say to them?
I think this opinion is wrong, totally wrong. First, of course, Trump said once that if he will be re-elected as a president, he needs 24 hours to find the solution because he knows Putin. And well, to say that it's naive approach, that's not enough to say. That's a stupid approach, because if you have on the one side not very well prepared politician as a president of the United States. Still, I'm using diplomatic language, because and the man who is 24 years, this is in power, who is formed by KGB, who is really very well informed by all intelligence and all these people surrounding him. So I think that is not an equal debate. And of course, it's easy if some who is very much tired with this conflict, it's easy to say, okay, let's end it. Ukraine historically is so much connected with Russia, so that if Russians they want to have this territory, these people, well, the problem is solved. But that is very unfair approach. First, and second, is very dangerous approach, because we know who knows Putin. These guys know very well. If Putin will win this war, if Putin will have entire Ukraine in his hands, he will not stop this aggressive politics. We'll have next places: Moldova, Caucasus, Central Asia, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, maybe not so much Baltic states, because these countries are first small, and secondly members of NATO and European Union. But that's his invitation for Putin. Let's go. Because what I said at the beginning of my response, for him, this number 3 element of this politics is to change international order. And for him, this rebuild of Great Russia means not only to rebuild territorial zone of, let's say, Russia, like during Russian Empire or Soviet Union. It means also to have many countries in the zone of influence, like Poland before 89. So that is a first big mistake. We cannot, and of course, if some who wants to say that I know Putin and therefore I will find the solution, is absolutely wrong, because what I met Putin in my period of the presidency, 95, 2005. He was elected 2000. And of course, our relations were a little bit special, because I was senior president, he was junior president. He just started, because he's older as me, not so much, say 3 years. And then second, we spoke Russian, and that is very, very important, because in culture, in Russian culture, also in Ukrainian culture as well, the best talks, the best conversation are without witnesses. Because and the translator to some extent is a witness, so that is not so nice. So we had this, and I know this person, and I tell you, of course, 23 years in power, 24 years in power, that is terribly long time. And even if Putin would be an angel, and he never been the angel, that's the demoralization would be obvious. And but after this time, we know about Putin one thing: he's a man without naivety. This man is cold, is well informed, and he knows better how to make partners, how to use some weaknesses of the partner. So, if Mr. Trump wants to tell us that 24 hours is enough for him, don't believe Mr. Trump. That is impossible if we want to have fair deal. To put it shortly, then ceasefire. Ceasefire, I tell you, I'm realistic. Probably that will have something like that, maybe because of American election, because of some talks, etc. But ceasefire is not a solution, especially for Ukraine. Because what means for Putin, ceasefire can be acceptable. To say to the world, well, you see my gesture, I'm ready to accept a ceasefire, but I expect that you will stop the sanctions against us, and I will buy time to rebuild the potential of the army, to buy more armaments, etc., etc. But for Ukraine, this is terrible, because it means the country is part of the country is occupied. They will have no more this military aid because, you know, the war is finished. And in all these talks, which are extremely important for Ukraine, European Union membership, NATO membership, that is the main problem. How to discuss these issues, how to decide about this membership with the country which is in such state, war or not war, something frozen, something ceasefire, etc. And I think this situation, this unclarity will be used by many partners in the world to at least to slow down the process and maybe to stop the process. And last point, fatigue. You know, I understand, you know, I'm a normal man, and I know also that if every day you have such news from the front about attacks, bombing, etc., that is much too much. And we have psychologically some kind of self-defense, of some reaction. No, it's too much. But we have to, understanding our fatigue, understanding that this situation also influences our life because of the increase of the prices, etc. We should understand that this war is not only about Ukraine. This is the war about democracy, respect to international law, etc. And if we are tired, what we can say about Ukrainians? Because they can be tired, doubled, tripled, etc. Because every day the people are dying. They have, you know, I've been once because I traveled to Kiev by train in the last 2 years quite several times. And I was waiting in the Kiev's railway station for the train to Przemyśl. This is very late, it's something close to midnight. And then before came a medical train. And I've seen that something is going on this railway station because a lot of ambulances came, very new, brand new, many, because from all this age, and then from this train, they started to take these young boys. You know, it was terrible, hundreds. And if you see, because if you see one, that's okay. But if you see hundreds, that you understand what is the scale of the sufferers, of these injured people, etc. So, understanding psychologically that we are tired with this war, we should understand that Ukrainians suffered much more. They need our understanding, they need our support, and in my opinion, that is extremely selfish and is extremely unfair to say, "Oh no, I don't want to be active on this stage because I'm tired." Yes, we are tired, but that is not excuse for
supporting Ukraine.
For supporting Ukraine or to stop our understanding of the Ukrainian situation.
Mr. President, thank you very much. And I think all of you were super quiet because it was so important. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.